The international community is condemning yesterday's raid by Israeli soldiers on an aid ship headed to Gaza. A team of commandos stormed the ship, setting off an hours-long confrontation that left at least 9 passengers dead. The vessel was carrying humanitarian relief supplies to Gaza and was attempting to avoid an Israeli blockade of the territory. Israeli officials insist the soldiers came under attack when they boarded the ship. This surveillance video from the Israeli Defense Force shows what appears to be a soldier being thrown overboard. At least 4 troops were wounded during the assault, and military officials say 2 of the relief workers on the ship were found with pistols taken from Israeli soldiers. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu canceled a planned meeting with President Obama to return home. While meeting with Canada's Prime Minister, Netanyahu defended the action, saying that Israel was trying to prevent weapons from coming into Gaza. One Israeli official said the goal of the ships was not to deliver supplies, but to break the blockade. And for more now on the situation, we're joined by CBS News Foreign Affairs analyst Pamela Falk. Good morning.
Good morning, Michelle.
Good to have you here. So how did this go so badly, and what was the intent of Israelis as they stopped these ships?
Well, clearly there will be more of an investigation, and part of the mandate at the UN was to try to decide what kind of an investigation there would be. But the Israeli allegation was that this was really attempting to just stop the breaking of a blockade. In other words, this was a threatening flotilla that was breaking the 3-year-old blockade on delivery of supplies to Gaza. It might be weapons, in other words. The flotilla's allegation, which was on a Turkish ship, was that it was humanitarian aid and also to show a protest against this 3-year-old blockade. And so what happened was they came on board, and then this bloody confrontation occurred. The fallout is what the Obama administration is going to have to deal with.
And so what has been the fallout? What's been the reaction from the international community?
Well, at the UN on Monday, what happened was most countries criticized Israel for the attack. In other words, the European Union, and that included traditional Israeli allies, Germany and France, as well as the UK, and all of them criticized Israel. Now, the U.S. ambassador was very clear to say, you know, there are traditional ways to bring the food in, and they didn't have to find this kind of a confrontation. But the real issue is the United States and the Obama administration is going to have to deal with the fallout from Turkey, which really considers it a very damaging issue between the U.S. and Turkey and Israel. And Turkey's been an ally of Israel in trying to foster the Middle East process, and the U.S. relationship with Turkey, which is an ally and a NATO member. So those two things are going to have to mix while there are demonstrations in Paris, in Islamabad, in New York City against Israel because of this. So the public perception is pretty bad.
A lot of people very upset about this. Now, can we expect retaliation from the Palestinians? Well,
interestingly, this brought both something that hasn't been able to be done by anyone else. It brought the Hamas Gaza faction together with the West Bank Fatah faction, and the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas condemned it and called for days of mourning. So these two sides of the Palestinian battle are really quite separate, but they both felt this was a disproportionate use of force. And that's unfortunate, because what Israel's trying to do is say, look, here's what the progress that you see in the West Bank is because Fatah's willing to talk and to some extent acknowledge Israel, at least in the talks. Hamas is running Gaza, and that's when the embargo and the blockade were really tightened, when Hamas was brought in to run Gaza. And so there's going to be a lot of fallout, obviously, in the Palestinian territories on both sides, in the West Bank and in Gaza, no question.
And so where do we go from here? Because I understand the UN for many hours discussing the response to this.
There was an open Security Council meeting for 2 hours, and then marathon consultations for 5 to try to map out what kind of an investigation should take place and how strongly to deplore the use of force. And that really was part of the negotiation. But the real issue, Michelle, is going to be, where did the UN backed, and the quartet is what it's called. The negotiations go forward now. Can they go forward? They had just begun about 3 weeks ago. What's going to happen to them in the future, or does this really put them into jeopardy?
It's very difficult when that positive momentum doesn't move forward. All right, Pamela Falk. Pamela, thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure.